I don't want no oil, a spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus. Good evening to Bowling Green, and hello to everyone.
Your Toledo
internet,
home for Ohio
wherever
State football
and
is
whenever
right
you
here on ESPN.
My name is Joe DeMare, and we are here with my fantastic co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together, Rebecca and I are going to craft an hour of unbelievable radio. Well, actually, it's believable because it's highly factual. A highly factual hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your family and your coworkers, and the birds that are starting to migrate, and the trees that are losing their leaves, and the worms that are doing their thing down there underground, and pretty much everybody and everything, because, like it or not, all of us are wrapped up together on this wonderful, living, for the moment, planet called Earth.
I heard geese this weekend, honking geese for the first time this year.
Yes, the geese are definitely practicing, going around in their V's, going back and forth. So we have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to chat for the next 10 minutes or so about various eco issues of the day. And then we're going to have a guest. We have a recorded interview with Stephany Seay, our good friend from Buffalo Roam Free Nation. And Stephany is going to be talking about this great new study that came out that basically scientifically supports all the assertions that the people who support the bison and oppose the Yellowstone buffalo slaughter annually basically says that they were right about everything. So that we'll talk about that. Then it'll be from our wonderful advertisers and patrons, to whom we are eternally grateful. And finally, well, not finally, then after that, we'll hear from Rebecca. And Rebecca, what will you be talking about this week?
I will be talking about pokeweed.
Pokeweed. Okay. All right. Sounds fun. And then it's ecological news. And this week I decided we need nothing but good news. All right. Because there's been so much terrible news that I decided this week we're going to just have good ecological news this week. And I was able to find enough stories to fill the whole hour with good eco news. So if you're someone who's been feeling kind of down, stick around for the second half of the show, because it'll definitely be a really good pick-me-up. One thing that is kind of picking people up at the moment around here in Northwest Ohio is the weather, since it's been so beautiful in terms of, nice and warm and clear and sunny. Unfortunately, it's actually much warmer than usual. It's 14 degrees above average temperature. And this one unpleasant thing, the reason I put so much positive news in the second half of the show is because what I'm going to talk about here in our introduction is extremely unpleasant. And that is one thing that happened this past week was Trump gave a speech at the UN.
Well, that's always extremely unpleasant.
Yes, and now,
Involves Trump talking.
yeah, now everybody in the country knows about the whole escalator thing. We're not going to talk about that at all, because what was really unhinged about the speech was not going off on escalators, but his attack on renewable energy, on green energy. He literally said at one point, talking about how terrible windmills are, he literally said, "The wind doesn't blow." So that's
Right, yeah.
that's a quote from Donald J. Trump. He made that quote on September 23rd, 2025. And I took note of it because that, to me, is the epitome of Donald Trump in terms of reality.
That is why human beings have to keep constantly moving, because otherwise we cannot escape the cloud of carbon dioxide we produce.
That we're breathing out.
Yeah,
Because the wind
it doesn't
blow.
move, so we have to move. And,
So
we have to walk away from it.
There's nothing.
Because it's just air. There's no such thing as wind. It's just air.
Right, air that just sits there perfectly still
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't have to say this, but we've all experienced wind, right? We've all had our hair.
It's pretty much in
blowing
the
at some
definition of wind that there is movement.
Right. So to literally get up in front of the world, in the world's stage there, at the UN, in front of every collected nation on the planet, and just say the wind doesn't blow, that sums up Donald Trump perfectly and completely.
Basically.
Yeah, because everything he says is in opposition to reality. I mean, you literally can't have wind if it doesn't blow. Why would you even have the word wind
Right.
if it doesn't blow? But he also made a whole bunch of other untrue, unreal assertions, like talking about clean air and clean water, saying that the U.S. has the cleanest air and the cleanest water. And that's not true. A lot of European countries have cleaner air and water. This past year, our air has been very dirty, largely because of the wildfires that are happening all over the North American continent. And he blamed China for the U.S.'s air pollution, even as he is cutting air pollution regulations and allowing fossil fuel companies, refineries, and so forth, to put more pollution into the air.
But the wind doesn't blow, so how is it getting here from China? Exactly.
That's a good question, Rebecca. How does that Chinese air get over here?
Presumably it's shipped in containers or something.
Yeah. Oh, it comes over on in the pallet, in the shipping.
Right.
And those boats that do the imports.
Right, yeah.
They're also carrying
imported bad air from
dirty
China.
air from China. Yeah. So
all right.
and and this is what our media should have focused on. These outrageous false statements about green energy and the state of the world in terms of global warming. He again said global warming was a hoax to the United Nations, to every nation of the world. All you have to do is go outside today, and it's going to be in the mid 80s here at the end of September, 14 degrees above average. Just like you could feel the wind in your hair, you can feel the heat when you're outside today. Global warming is definitely happening. So what kind of so there were a lot of absolutely false statements, just completely 100% false, that you can't just let slip by, because once they do, then you're kind of woven into his fantasy world. But he also did a lot of half-truths. It was kind of amusing. There was one point in the speech where he just started praising Germany because he says that Germany has given up on renewable energy and is going back to coal and nuclear. And they cut over to the German representation at the UN while he was saying that, and their expressions on their faces were just, I mean,
it was news to them, was it?
Yeah, well, they were mortified. Now this actually is a half truth. Okay, this because what's happened to Germany, they had they elected a right-wing government this last parliamentary elections, Chancellor Merz, MERZ, and they are saying in parliament, they're saying, oh, we are still committed to reducing our greenhouse gases, but we're open to trying all methods of reducing greenhouse gases, including carbon capture, which we've talked about many times is a complete hoax. There's a hoax for you, carbon capture and storage. So they're actually, Trump is kind of right about that, except that publicly and right after Trump's speech, Merz had to give a speech to German parliament where all the opposition parties were like, look, Trump just said you're going back on all our climate commitments, and they swore up and down, Merz swore up and down, no, we're not doing that. All we want to do is switch over to market forces instead of government regulation and blah, 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 blah. So so that was kind of fun that Trump actually called them out on that by complimenting them on it.
Right.
So the praise of Trump has now sort of destroyed the Merz, the right-wing German government in terms of popularity because, because what he praised them for was something that nobody in Germany wants. Nobody in Germany actually wants to go back to global warming and to put more CO2 in the air. Germans realize that doing that is suicide. And in fact, renewable energy in Germany went up 3% last year, and now it's, as of 2024, wind and sun provides 60% of Germany's electricity. It's the most stable grid in Europe. And if they were planning to sneak fossils and nukes back in, Trump just did a great favor for the environmentalists by forcing them to back off again, because now everybody in Germany's up in arms saying, how can you do what Trump wants you to do? Because the U.S., thanks to his foreign policy, is universally now panned. We are, in fact, the bad guys because Trump is doing things like claiming global warming is a hoax, even as countries see more and more effects of global warming, and he's pushing fossil fuels, and pushing nuclear power and doing everything possibly wrong to cement our place as a leader in the world. In fact, the rest of the world, that's part of our stories in the second half of the show, the rest of the world is not waiting for us. The rest of the world is moving on. And so Trump's speech to the UN, which without hesitation, I'm going to call that the worst speech by a U.S. president in front of the United Nations in history. Okay? And if you want to see it for yourself, you can go to the United Nations YouTube channel. Trump wasn't the only national leader. In fact, about 100 national leaders gave speeches in front of the UN, and they're all there in their completeness. If you manage to wade through the insanity of Trump's speech, his hour-long speech, which was only supposed to be 15 minutes, by the way. That's the limit they're given. I recommend that, if you manage to sit all the way through that, watch the president of Finland's speech right after that to sort of reset your brain and sort of clear it, because his speech was like, and the speech of most of the rest of the world leaders was rational. It made sense, and it wasn't full of these outright lies, half-truths, and just distractors like the escalator problem, which completely took the U.S. media, all the commentators, all the news stories, all we hear about is the escalator thing, and nobody covered the fact that he basically got up there and sort of doomed the United States by attacking alternative or clean energy, by attacking wind, solar, and storage. So that was the huge rant I had to do. I don't get to get up in front of the United Nations, and this is the public forum that I've got, and so I'm going to use it to the best of my ability. And one of the things that we have used this forum for is to pay attention to the plight of the Yellowstone bison. And we did a nice interview with our friend Stephany Seay from Roam Free Nation about this new study that's just come out that basically shows how essential to the health of the prairie ecosystem having free roaming bison is. Not just bison in fences, but bison that get to go where they want to, when they want to. So let's go to that interview now. Welcome back to For a Green Future. Could you please share with us your name and who you're with?
Hi, thank you so much for having us on again. My name's Stephany Seay. I'm the co-founder of Roam Free Nation. We're a Montana-based wild buffalo and a wild nature advocacy group.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, pleasure to have you on. I sort of consider you our go-to person when things come up that have to do with the bison, with buffalo. And
Thank you.
yes, and specifically, there's been a bit of news about a study of the Yellowstone bison. Are you familiar with that study? Could you share a little bit about it with us?
Yeah, it was Chris Jeremiah was involved with it, University of Wyoming, and I forget the third one. I have the article posted, but yeah, they have been following the buffalo for about 6 years, studying their migration and their relationship basically with the grass that they eat and their migratory patterns. And what they discovered is something we've always known is that buffalo are good for the earth and take care of the grass. Uh, It's kind of one of those duh moments, but it's really nice to have it on paper from scientists because a lot of times you get people they go through Yellowstone and they're, oh, it's so overgrazed, it's overgrazed. And this study clearly shows that that is not the case. And the buffalo don't even use all the available habitat that's in the park.
Mhm.
And it demonstrates that we need more buffalo on a larger landscape to help heal the wounded earth.
Yeah, you mentioned that some people talk about overgrazing. I mean, specifically, the ranchers that kind of want the bison exterminated use that as one of their arguments quite a bit, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And and it also shows you that when you don't fence in populations, that the grasses will stay much healthier. And fencing in any animal is going to cause damage to the earth.
Mhm. Yeah. And and as you say, this is something you said that we've known for a long time. I mean, this kind of matches your observations with the time that you've spent uh, with the bison in the
Certainly,
park, right?
definitely.
Mhm.
I mean, the earth chose them to be the caretakers in that way, along with prairie dogs. The buffalo are the ones who take care of the grasslands and prairies, um, and I think I mentioned that prairie land ecosystems are one of the most endangered in the world.
I actually took a trip to Denver, Colorado a week or two ago, and I didn't realize that they had prairie dogs there in Denver and in specifically Loveland. Um,
They're in the medians at the airport.
yeah,
They live in the medians. It's crazy. And they get hammered in Colorado. I have a dear friend, Deanna Meyer, who runs Prairie Protection Colorado, and she works very, very hard to protect colonies of prairie dogs. But they just get hammered left and right throughout that state.
yeah. My sons and I actually took a walk along the border fence for the Armory Park in, just outside the airport in Denver there. And there were a lot of prairie dogs inside the fence,
Yeah.
but outside the fence, it was clear that they were being poisoned or shot or
Yeah.
they were it was clear that they were trying to move out of the fenced area, but they were being exterminated out there. And I also saw two bison in in the Armory Park. It was really neat to see them, even though it's just two and as you say, it's not a natural situation. The bison there are fenced in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the Yellowstone bison are kind of unique in that they have the genetics, the original genetics of the wild bison.
Yep. They're very special. And they're the last wild migratory population left. and continuously wild. They've never been put anywhere by humans, in
Hmm.
particular the central herd. Um, and I thought it was something else that was really interesting from that article was that they said that the buffalo migrate about 1,000 miles each year, just their movement. And that article, people can find it. It did appear in the New York Times, and it also appeared in the BBC Wildlife News, which you can get without a subscription.
Hmm. Yeah, so it kind of comes at an opportune time, right? Because they're still considering the idea of giving the Yellowstone bison endangered species status.
They're supposed to have a decision in 2026, but I'm just with this administration. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think we know what's going to happen. I mean, none of these guys are friends to wildlife. So,
Hmm. Well, yeah, and particularly his choice to be the head of the uh, wildlife service, the
yeah.
Fish and Wildlife Service. About when do we know in 2026 will the decision come down, and who exactly is making that decision?
They didn't really say it'll be the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, so it'll be him.
Hmm.
And his name escapes me right now.
Okay, well, I'll stick it in there somehow. Um, so you actually spent a lot of time with the bison, and so you said this is kind of a duh moment for you. This might not be a fair question, but if you could sort of speculate, how much of the behavior in the Yellowstone bison do you think is just sort of genetic or instinctual, ingrained, and how much of it is kind of cultural in terms of the bison teaching each other, okay, it's time to move on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's both, but there's definitely a really strong cultural component. Um, their matriarch societies led by the adult females, and they tell everybody when it's time to move and where the best place to move to is, and where to find the best water, where to find safety. So there's a lot of that, but it's also certainly instinctual.
Hmm. So kind of like a herd might be sort of like get the feeling that it's time to move on, and that, but there's definitely leaders in the herd that say, okay, we're going now, and here's where we're going.
For sure. And I mean, it'll be, the condition of where they've been grazing for however long, the change in the weather, different factors like that are going to tell them when it's time to do different things and go different places.
Hmm. So the tourist season is almost over there,
Winding down.
winding down, right? Where they how was this year, do you know, for in terms of like sort of tourist bison interaction?
There were a couple of goings this year.
Mm,
One happened really early, which was kind of surprising because they tend to usually happen during the rut, and it's
mm,
usually always bulls. But one happened before the rut even started, which I was a little surprised by. But
mhm.
everybody stayed alive.
Well, that's good. Is this the rut now? Is this when ruts?
It's it's pretty much over now.
Hmm. So when does it start and when does it end usually?
It starts in July and it peaks out in August and starts to fade away at early September.
Hmm. Okay. And so the bison that are going to have calves have been impregnated now, and
Yep.
yeah, and so then they'll be gestating over the winter,
Yep. And a
and
lot of them will end up getting shot by hunters.
mm,
And we'll end up finding baby buffalo in their mother's gut piles, which is one of the worst things in the world.
so has there been any progress on that front in terms of perhaps the native hunters agreeing to or placing limits on themselves in terms of what they're going to take this year, this hunting season?
It depends. It often depends. They usually, each tribe sets their own seasons and quotas, but it also depends on what the trap inside Yellowstone is doing. If they're capturing a bunch of buffalo, if there's more that are still migrating out of the park, they're going to kill as many as they can if the park is actively capturing because they feel like those are buffalo being taken away from them. Um, And, there are some tribes who are trying to talk to their hunters about not killing adult females. Um, but it's such a frenzy when the hunters encounter the buffalo. There's not a lot of thinking taking place. There's just a lot of shooting.
Mm-hmm. And the numbers that they're going to take this year,
They will decide that at the November meeting.
the November meeting. Okay. Well, we'll definitely check back in with you
For
uh,
sure.
at that point. Tell us a little bit more about Road Free Nation and how people can get involved or help your organization out.
Well, obviously we are, advocate for the buffalo, and we try to be in the field as much as we possibly can. Um, and we document all actions made against them. We share people, their story, their perspective, and we tell the truth. We don't hold anything back. Oh, there's some groups that won't talk about some of these things that are happening, but we will, and we'll show you so you can see what's actually taking place. You can find us on the web at roamfreenation.org. You can find us on Facebook, and you can find us on Instagram.
Okay, I'm searching for Roam Free Nation in all those places. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I would just say it was nice to have some good news to talk about today. One of
Hmm.
the ironies is that one of the authors is Chris Jeremiah, who's the head bison biologist for Yellowstone National Park. And he publishes a paper like this, yet he advocates for slaughtering buffalo each year. Go figure.
Hmm. Well, at least he had the self-respect or the enough to like actually go where the science led him,
Right.
actually report the data that he actually collected.
Yeah.
It
And
might not have been the data he wanted, right?
right.
Or expected. Yeah.
It's just great to have a paper like this to, help educate people when they just come up with these crazy comments about how the buffalo impact the earth.
Hmm. Because they've been around quite a while, right?
For yeah, about 800,000 years.
Yeah. And so if they were a species that depleted the earth, I think they probably would have, forced themselves out of existence a
Right.
long time ago.
Right. And especially existing in the tens of millions and being good for the earth.
Hmm.
It all points to we need more buffalo in a larger landscape.
Hmm. Well, all right. Well, Stephany, thanks. It was good talking with you again. And
Thank you.
of course, if there's any new uh, new developments in the whole Yellowstone bison situation, don't be afraid to contact us.
No worries. Thank you so much.
All right. And thank you, folks, for listening to that interview with Stephany Seay. Just a few follow-up points about this. The actual study was published in the journal Science, actually on August 28th, and the title was Yellowstone Free Moving Large Bison Herd Provides a Glimpse of Their Past Ecosystem Functions. And what they focused on was the flow of nutrients and how the areas of Yellowstone that are being grazed by the free roaming herd have tons more nutrients in the soil and in the plants, and the plants are healthier and there's greater biodiversity, and basically it's just better in every way. So that's that. If you really want to read the whole actual study yourself, go to Science, August 28th. The other little follow-up fact: the head of the U.S. Forest Service is a fellow named Tom Schultz, and it appears that his main qualification, quote unquote qualification, is that he has been a timber lobbyist his entire life, and so he basically advocates for cutting down all the trees. So that's why he got put as head of the U.S. Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service. So I don't know. Hopefully, we'll see what happens with the endangered species designation. Okay. Next, I want to thank our patrons and sponsors. For a Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. Imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place, it's right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before. By maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every single day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore, get outside, experience nature. Your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org or follow on Instagram, Facebook, or X, or call 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. And this is a particularly good time to go to the website and look for volunteer opportunities because they're doing things like harvesting the wild seeds from the native plants in their in the parks in order to propagate them for their native plant sales. And so they're doing lots of other fun stuff too. So be sure to go check out their website. For Green Futures, also brought to you by our wonderful patrons, and they are people who have gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page. They used, they picked the level of membership that matched their budget. And now every month a little bit comes out of their accounts, comes over to us. And that's how we can afford to bring this information to you that I could safely say nobody else is bringing. I have not heard any of the national news talking about the content of Trump's speech in terms of things like renewable energy. But that's the sort of thing we zero in on, and we're happy to share that with you, but we need patrons in order to do that. So please consider becoming a patron yourself by going to patreon.com. All right, Rebecca, your turn at the mic. What are we talking about this week?
All right. Well, I was interested in talking about pokeweed this week because I heard from various sources that they were edible. Sometimes the same source, actually. They're edible, they're toxic, and they're also medicinal. And I was like, well, how can all those things be exactly?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I looked it up. Pokeweed is, Latin name Phytolacca americana. They go from 4 to 10 feet. I'm going to try and describe these. They look like if you look at the pictures, they look like some Art Nouveau dude's concept of overly symmetrical grapes. Except for they're overly symmetrical, they're smaller than regular grapes, and they're like usually very, very dark purple to the point where they look black, but they're on these magenta stalks. So it looks like the purple black somehow bled into the stalks, but that's not what happened. Mm-hmm. So they're very unique, interesting looking berries. The plant has, they're a large toxic herbaceous perennial, and their leaves are alternate and coarse. And they're apparently, they're from the pokeweed family Phytolaccaceae, which I guess would make them the type genus for that family. They usually have green or white flowers and a large white taproot. And they have berries, obviously, which are a food source for birds, including, the gray catbird, northern mockingbird, northern cardinal, brown thrasher, other birds, and even some small animals which don't have the sensitivity to their mammalian toxins. They're very, very toxic to humans, dogs, and livestock, which is one reason humans don't like them on their property. So their conservation status is secure. They're native to the Midwest and southern North America, and they're also introduced in the West and naturalized in some parts of Europe. And farmers really hate them because they poison livestock, obviously. some of the ecological benefits are that they support wildlife, not only by being a food source, but pollinators like them as well. They improve the soil health. Their roots stabilize the soil and prevent erosion, and also they can apparently leach up heavy metals. Drawbacks, they displace native plants. They can do that. They're a very rapid spreader, mostly through bird poop. Birds eat them and poop them out other places, and they have the seeds in the poop. So, and because they have that big taproot and they stabilize the soil so well, they're also tough to remove. They can regenerate from a partial root crown being the part of a root system from which the stem arises. So that's our term of the day. I only had to look up one term for this. So yeah, the threats to them would include the giant leopard moth, human plowing and mowing, because we don't like them. They're poisonous to us and our dogs and our cattle and so forth. Also herbicides and mammals and birds. And okay, but why, you ask, are they toxic, edible, and medicinal? Well, they're toxic because they're toxic. Like all parts of the plant are toxic. I believe in the spring you can make something called poke salad if you want to, although we do not encourage this, by boiling if you cook the shoots and leaves or something, I think.
The very early shoots in the spring.
Very early shoots in the spring. If you cook them just right, if you know how to do this, then they are, I guess, not poisonous, or at least, yeah.
Yeah, no, they are edible if you do it right.
So they're the sort of the puffer fish of the land.
Right, tasty fish. Right. So,
and also they are medicinal. Okay, I don't know exactly what they were used for, but according to a random farmhand named Kendall, who we know, you can take maybe one for muscle cramps.
Huh.
You can take more than one, or you will be very, very sorry. One or maybe two
of the berries.
Yeah, more than two is a very bad idea. So
we're not advocating that, but I think it has been used that way.
Right. Yeah. So, like, if you know what you're doing, and a lot of medicines that we have are in fact poison if you take too much, or if you take it and you don't have that condition, even among actual pills, which are approved by the medicinal industry. So, yeah, you really don't want to eat those unless you have a trained practitioner who really knows what they're doing, basically. So
this is important. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is why you can eat them, but it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And you can use them as medicine, but that's also dangerous.
Right.
Because they are poison.
All right. Cool. Just two things to add to that. One is that the reason they're called pokeweed is because they're some of the first plants to poke up out of the snow.
Oh, I wonder.
Spring. Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was because they were named after the Latin name, but.
Nope. And in fact,
my second guess was James K. Polk, but that probably was not it. I knew that was a long shot all along.
Yeah. And so, in fact, the settlers, what they would do is get pokeweed roots and keep them in their cellars. And so then in the spring, they would send up the poke shoots, and being out of light, those shoots are less toxic, and so they would actually use them like asparagus, and so they'd be like some of the first quote unquote greens they could eat in the springtime. And the other name for pokeweed is inkberry.
Right.
And in fact, you can use those berries to make this beautiful purple ink that goes really well in fountain pens. And we have a little video on our YouTube channel describing how to make ink out of pokeweed berries. Nice. So if you want to go check that.
I wonder if it would work as a dye for
it does.
Fibers. Okay.
It does also work as a dye for fibers, and so a really rich purple, beautiful dye. So.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca, for talking about pokeweed. And
welcome.
I've got a ton of it in my yard this year. It's in fact, I found some in my. Well, never mind. The berries tend to get everywhere. If you brush up against them, you'll find these purple stains on your clothes.
Oh no!
They come out with stain treatment, but
Joe's dog has a little enclosure that they let it out in, so don't worry, it's not going to eat the berries.
Yeah. Okay, on to ecological news, and like I said, this is a rare, all good news eco news segment this week. So the first story is a feel-good story. This past week was Climate Week in New York City, which is billed as the world's largest climate gathering outside of the UN's COP, Conference of the Parties thing. It's organized by something called the Climate Group, and it's been going for 16 years. And this year, 100,000 people from all over the world came, and there were over 1,000 events of everything from concerts to lectures. They had a solar battery powered concert. They had EV races, electric vehicle races. They had a climate film festival. Just a huge, gathering of people from all over the world who understand that climate change or global warming is real. We've got to do something about it. And these are people and organizations that we're getting together to say, okay, so what exactly are we going to do, and how are we going to do it, and what's our timetable for doing it? And it's just an example. It's kind of funny that this happened in the same week as the UN conference. So New York City was just, completely overwhelmed this past week with people from all over the world gathering there. But it was just a sharp contrast between Trump's UN anti-environmental speech and this gathering of 100,000 people who are all working to try to fix the global warming problem. It's just an example that the world is moving ahead and leaving the United States behind, thanks to the Republicans and thanks to their environmental policies. Even China, which is the world's biggest CO2 producer, their CO2 has started dropping this year because they put in so much wind and solar. They're actually now starting to curtail their CO2 production from coal plants and natural gas plants. And in fact, soon China is going to be able to pivot, because soon China's CO2 emissions will drop below the US's emissions. And then China is going to be able to pivot and say, look, that's the world's biggest polluter. Look what we're doing with all our wind and solar. They're terrible. We're wonderful. Line up with us and leave those dummies behind. So, but as long as we keep trying, as long as we have events like Climate Week in New York City, we can hopefully salvage something of the U.S.'s reputation. But I find that that's very encouraging, very hopeful, very optimistic, because Climate Week has been growing every year in all 16 years. So this was, again, a record. Last year was a record. The year before was a record. This year was a record number of events and number of people. So that's good news that they had Climate Week in New York City. Next story, and this one is one that I could sort of rub my hands together gleefully on. This is a story in Electrek, and it was run on September 22nd. And the title is, "In a Blow to Trump, Yay! Judge Clears Orsed's Revolution Wind to Resume." So we reported on this a few weeks ago, actually about a month ago, that the Trump administration just flat out, even though there was a wind farm that was 80% done off the U.S. coast, the U.S. Just said, no, you can't do that, shut it down. And so they took them to court, and the U.S. district judge there, Royce Lambert, who was a Reagan-appointed judge, actually, so this is not some liberal Democrat, said in his decision that this was the height of arbitrary and capricious government conduct, and that
No kidding.
Yes, and that it would definitely create irreparable harm to Ørsted to have to stop working on a project that was 80% complete. And the situation is that Rhode Island and Connecticut have lawsuits against the administration saying, basically saying that the whole thing doesn't make any sense, that the government can't just turn around and say, stop doing it. And what the judge's decision here, what the district court judge's decision is that the construction can resume. Ørsted can finish their thing while the Rhode Island and Connecticut lawsuits keep going, work their way through the courts. So that's nice. It's just a flat out loss
Makes
for
some
the
sense.
for the it makes some sense, doesn't it? Isn't that nice to have a
Yeah.
judicial decision that makes some sense?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's good. And it was a Reagan appointed judge. So this is not, some hoity-toity liberal, Democrat or something, let alone a green. Wouldn't that be nice if we had greens in the Justice Department?
That'd be lovely.
Never mind. All right. So that's a good news. Next story. This is from The Guardian on September 23rd. Title of this one, Global Investment in Renewable Energy up 10% on 2024 despite Trump rollback. So Trump is reversing all the U.S. government investments in wind and solar, but what's happening is that the private sector is coming in because the economics of it, wind and solar are the cheapest form of energy. They have the fastest return, the best rate of return. And so even though the government is pulling back on subsidies and actively trying to destroy wind and solar, they're still the best investment. And so what happened is that investment in the last year, or in the first half of 2025, investment in wind and solar increased $386 billion. That's a 10% increase, and this is a new investment. The total energy investment around the world was $3.3 trillion. Only $1 trillion of that was fossil. So they are still investing to some degree in gas and oil and even coal, but $2.2 trillion of that was low carbon. That is battery, wind, solar, and hydro and so forth. So finance for wind actually went through the roof. That increased 25%. There's in the pipeline, there are $470 billion of announced projects, mostly for improving the grid and transmission of renewable energy. And even as our government turns around and tries to head back into the 1950s, most corporations are actually pushing forward with net zero policies. In fact, of the top 2,000 companies of the world in terms of revenue, 70% of them have plans to get to net zero and are moving forward on those plans, even though the U.S. government is reversing course. In addition, 19 U.S. states have zero emission plans and are following them. And in the U.S. alone, the 304 of the largest corporations, which represent 2/3 of corporate revenue and have revenues of about $12 trillion, are all still committed and are still working towards stopping carbon, because they realize if they keep worsening global warming, their businesses will get destroyed. And there used to be a vacuum cleaner corporation out of New Orleans that was, they were nationwide. They had ads everywhere. I actually had some of their products. I had an air filter that was built by them. I'm trying to remember their name. But their factory was destroyed by a hurricane, and they were never able to recover.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, these kinds of things, businesses are seeing these things happening to their assets being literally wiped off the map, and they realize they've got to do something or that could collapse the entire economic system. Next story. The World Nuclear Industry Status Report came out this past week. It's 590 pages, and basically it gives a snapshot every year of what the nuclear industry actually is, as opposed to what the nuclear industry says they are. And what the nuclear industry actually is completely stagnant. And it's been pretty stagnant for roughly 20 years now. There's 408 nuclear reactors around the world. Their average age is 32.6 years old. So they're old, they're inefficient, they're breaking down all the time. The share of electric power provided to the world by nuclear is still down. It's around 9%. Wind and solar actually produce more than nuclear now, and they have for a couple years now. More countries have stopped, have ended their nuclear programs like Taiwan and Germany, more countries have gotten out of nuclear than have started new nuclear. And the big thing, one of the biggest things in this report is that there's no investment. Investors are not risking their money on nukes because they're always late. They always cost more than they're supposed to. It's a good way to lose your money. And so nobody's investing in them. And there's also, universally, there's construction delays. And nuclear plants are some of the most complicated things that humans have ever built because they've got just thousands and thousands of valves and relays and temperature gauges and emergency systems. And it takes so long to build them that people really, don't have the skills to build them anymore. So one thing that they point out in this is that for nukes just to stay where they are, just to stay at 9%, there would have to be thousands of new startups, and that's not happening. There are almost no new nuclear startups. The very few that do get started, the pro-nuclear people tout those and advertise them. But even as they're doing that, older plants are shutting down and other countries are getting out of the nuclear business altogether. And so the status report for nuclear power is on its way out, basically, no matter what Trump or the pro-nukers say. Okay, final story. And this is in outdoorlife.com, and it was on September 22nd. The title of this story is More Than 99% of Americans Disapprove of Roadless Rule Rollbacks, according to new analysis. And so what is happening is there's a proposal right now by the Forest Service to eliminate the roadless rule. And we've reported on this before. The roadless rule basically says if you have a pristine wilderness that has never had a road in it, you can't build a road in it. Okay, so those last tiny little pockets that are left of true wilderness, those have to be protected because you can't build a road in there to cut them all down and haul them all out. And so the Center for Western Priorities analyzed the public comments that have come in on that. And they had they had a shortened 21-day comment period. And so they went and they got over 625,000 comments on it. And most of those comments actually were good old-fashioned paper. Like people actually wrote letters and sent them in, as opposed to just, those forums that you get online where you just click and it submits it. 99.2% of the people who commented said do not eliminate the roadless rule.
Good
Yes.
for them.
Right. And part of the reason is that these parts of the national forests that are roadless are literally the best hunting and fishing spots on Earth.
No doubt, yeah.
Because they're still wild, they're still productive. You can go fish, and then you can go back and fish again, and there's still fish there. It's not a partisan issue. That was one of the things that Center for Western Priorities was emphasizing in their analysis of these public comments. In fact, a quote from Mr. Weiss, who's the director of the Center for Western Priorities, he said, "This is not a partisan issue. This is not a state-by-state issue. This is unanimous."
Right. Nobody wants to scrap.
Right. Americans are telling the Forest Service, don't do this. And I find this incredibly hopeful because if you have 99.2% of the people agreeing on this and telling the Forest Service not to do it, that means that includes very conservative people. It includes the Magans, the MAGA people. Nobody wants the destruction of the final little bits of wilderness in the United States. So it's entirely possible that Tom Schultz, the timber industry executive, is going to completely ignore the hundreds of thousands and the unanimous, 0.6% of the respondents said, yes, go ahead and cut down the last trees, build those roads. 0.6%. All right. That's almost
Wow.
nobody. In the interest of math, the final 0.2% were they're classified as neutral. I don't know. Why bother writing it if your response is going to be meh? But
yeah, that's kind of weird.
yeah. But
do what you want.
But I want to focus on the 99.2% that said don't do this. So it's entirely possible Tom Schultz is going to completely ignore the public comment and literally run over the will of Americans in terms of protecting these last pieces of the planet that are actually still the way they're supposed to be. But it's going to cost him. This is just another brick in the wall between Trump and his supposed supporters, that he keeps disappointing them, keeps doing things that they say they did not elect him for. And I think it's pretty safe to say that if you ask anybody who voted for Trump, did you vote for Trump because you wanted him to cut down the last wilderness on the continent?
Apparently not.
I guess most of them would say no, and the numbers back that up. So, all right, well, that's all the news I had lined up for today. We still have some time if somebody wanted to make a call or a comment on any part of what we talked about today. Lines are open at 877-909-1007. We have time for just about one call. So, and did you find this all good news episode of our ecological news segment? Did you find it uplifting? Do you feel a little more upbeat now? Because it is good to know that even the people that put the current administration into office, even those people don't share the administration's desire to destroy the last little bits of the environment. One of the reasons I put this show on the air is because I've always believed that the environment, that ecology, is something that we should all and could all agree on. It should not be a political issue. And, once upon a time, it wasn't. Once upon a time, I remember, Republicans and Democrats, conservatives, the idea of conservatives, at one time, conservatives embraced conservation. Conservatives and liberals, everybody agreed that we had to protect the environment. And that led to kind of a golden age in terms of fixing pollution problems. Lake Erie used to be ecologically dead. It was declared biologically dead because there was so much pollution in it that, you could not fish in it. That things were millions of fish were washing up the shore every day. And we all got together and we did it in a nonpartisan manner. We did it as Americans. We did it as human beings who need clean air and clean water to survive. And we changed the laws and we fixed the problems. We've slid back thanks to politicians like Trump, who made his insane rant at the United Nations. But we can still slide back in the correct direction again. We can turn this around and fix it. We just have to agree to do it, and then all of us have to work on it. And so that's it for our show. I hear the music playing. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you're coming back next week. We know we are. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give fighting